What do these beauties all have in common, and what does it all mean? Look at those magwells. AR10s is what we're talking about, coming up next on GBGuns. As early as World War II, semi-auto battle rifles were a thing. The idea was full power rifle cartridges that later became semi-autos. This is a G3 clone put out by PTR. This is probably represent your 60s, if you will, 50s and 60s, having a semi-auto 308 full power, full house gun. But even with the stamped aluminum design that the G3 came with, it's still a bit heavy and ungainly. Time for some advancements, time for something American. Eugene Stoner and Armalite created the AR10 using plastic and aluminum, having a much lighter weight system. This is a recreation from Brownell's, the BRN10, showing you what that looks like. But unfortunately, these were never adopted. Shooting. I'm going to rotate a little bit, my shoulder in, and hand way back here, and getting smacked in the face by that rear sight. That's not easy. Come on, let's get modern. So lighter weight, a little more portable. M16, yada yada yada. But my point is the AR10 never became a standard, never became a mil spec. So today there's a lot of different options out there that you can find. A lot of bad range lore out there, some of which I thought was true until I proved otherwise. Let's take a look at some of those modern guns. Fast forward a few decades and we've got a Stag 10 here. This has the rounded cut receivers, more on that later. But this was my first exposure to an AR-10 that runs and runs. So this gun came, in fact, did a review on it a couple years ago. I've had it ever since. Only thing I've changed is muzzle brake and this adaptive tactical stock, which has a lot of cushy on it. But with this setup, I took it to a 4-day front sight carbine course and ran it support side. So that's right, while everyone's going pew 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 with their ARs, I was in there next to them doing something like thump thump. This gun runs. It proved to me that AR-10s can be viable and have been figured out. And can shoot smoothly. Is the Stag 10, a favorite of mine. So moving from functional to a lot more stylish, this is the DoubleStar 10B. I think the B stands for beef because this is a heck of a gun. You see those beautiful billet receivers there and the round cut. This has a CMC trigger in it and a big old DoubleStar brake, and it also really runs. This receiver is so large on this cut here that I can get a full magwell grip on it with my infamous banana hands. But styling is somewhere between bench gun and fighting gun. It's a bit pretty for a fighting gun, but you can just wail on it. Watch how smooth the recoil is on this thing. Whew. It just flies. DoubleStar 10B, a favorite of mine. I think my first article on this, I said if Batman had a rifle, because the styling on here just looks like the Bat gun. So that's two different rifles we've covered. One with the round cut here, one with the angular cut. That's because, remember, the military never adopted these, so there is no mil spec. It's part of the trouble or the challenge in building one of your own. But they can be made to run. What about pistols? So Diamondback out of Florida has this pistol. You can notice shaving that barrel weight off makes the gun a lot lighter and quicker handling. This has the angular cut receivers. You can see there if it'll focus. There we go. And everything else handles much more like an AR-15. Now keep in mind though, it's still a 308. So running those braces, you got to be careful which brace you choose. Base.
Huh?
So keep in mind when you're shooting those full power rifle cartridges, now this is old 7.6251 military surplus, which of course 7.6251 is actually lower pressure than 308. It's the opposite of the 223 thing. So if it's marked 7.62, try to avoid 308. If it's marked 308, you can shoot both. But anyways, when you've got a barrel about this long, there is some powder that's not being burnt before the round leaves the chamber. So it can make for a bit of a light show, and the gust off of that break can knock weapons off a rack 5 feet behind you. So what happens when you go even shorter? DoubleStar has the answer here with their 10B for beef pistol. Now you notice it's got a flash hider on the end of that. Let's see how well it can hide the flash from this 30-year-old military surplus. And you notice it's also rocking T a little more. So when it gets this short, you're getting a lot of pressure coming back. Don't worry, the strong arm brace and its solid metal construction is here to save you. Fun gun to have. How much energy you're still getting out of here, well, that's up for you to decide. But let's make another light show. Definitely throws it out there, and you feel it in the shoulder. There is some rocking to be done. Gotta flex the abs, folks. So, AR-10s, I think they're a blast, to be a little cheeky. Tia, you hadn't had much AR-10 experience. What are your thoughts?
They're a little more pushy than a lot of the other guns that we've had the pleasure of shooting. But there are definitely some that are more pushy than others.
Yeah, and that all comes down to what gas system they decided to make work, the recoil system, reciprocating mass in the bolt and things. But one thing to definitely keep in mind when you're looking into AR-10s, especially if you want to build one, is there's more than one receiver standard. This DoubleStar has a rounded cut, whereas the Stag has the angular cut to it. So obviously this upper won't go on that lower and vice versa. The other thing you want to keep in mind is because there's no mil-spec, the mag catch can be a little different from gun to gun. This is where our multi-mag test comes in, and as you've seen with some other guns, not all mags work in all guns. So watch that first before you go buy mags. I think AR-10s are a lot of fun.
They are.
It's a little extra weight, it's a little extra thump, it has also a little extra expense, makes you appreciate why intermediate cartridges became a thing, and why the M16 became a thing, or the 5.56 version instead of 308, but that doesn't mean having a little bit of extra burns.
No, not at all. And I think the weight is interesting in that it varies a lot,
Yeah.
depending on the way that it was constructed.
Yeah, it's where you can definitely feel a difference in barrel thickness, handguard, receiver, things like that. Obviously, the DoubleStar has a lot of extra aluminum on it as part of the style, part of the cool. The Stag is kind of minimalist. I think Diamondback has a newer generation than the pistol we showed that has a more angular cut to it, make it even lighter. But I think they're loads of fun if you've got the ammo, or if you want an AR that provides a little more punch. Why not AR-10?